My husband cheated on me and said I was not woman enough for him. And even my best friends defended him. My name is Rachel. I am 31 years old, and I need to tell a story that turned my whole life upside down. I know this sounds like the kind of story people share online for attention, but I promise this is real. A few months ago, I was just a normal wife living in Portland, Oregon. I had been married for 6 years to Brian. He worked as a sales manager at a tech company. I handled the home. I kept things running. We had a small circle of friends. We had quiet weekends, grocery runs, movie nights, and plans that felt safe. From the outside, our life looked calm and ordinary. But sometimes a life can look fine while the truth is rotting underneath. I did not see it at first. I felt it. It started with little shifts in Brian that I tried to ignore. First, he began staying late at work. At first it was once in a while. Then it became normal. He would come home at 10 or 11 at night, acting tired, acting stressed, always carrying a reason that sounded believable. Urgent reports. Last-minute client calls. Team problems. Meetings that ran long. He would say the right words, the kind of words a loyal wife wants to believe. Then other changes followed. He started wearing a new cologne. It was expensive, sharp, and unfamiliar. I knew the smell right away because it did not belong to our life. Brian had worn the same simple scent for years, but suddenly he smelled like a stranger who cared too much about being noticed. His clothes changed too. My husband had always been casual. He never cared if his shirts had wrinkles. He never cared if his pants looked old. But now he started dressing like someone trying to impress. Crisp shirts, new slacks, polished shoes. It looked like he was walking out of a store display, not walking into our living room. The biggest change was his phone. Brian used to leave it everywhere. On the counter. On the couch. In the bathroom. He never acted like it was a secret. But then he started holding it all the time. If he put it down, he placed it face down. He kept it on silent. If I asked who was texting, he would give a short answer like work and then shift the conversation fast. He smiled at the screen sometimes, a soft private smile. And what hurt the most was realizing I had not seen that kind of smile aimed at me in a long time. I kept telling myself I was overthinking. I told myself marriage has seasons. People get busy. People get stressed. 6 years together meant something. We had bought our home in the Hawthorne area. We talked about having kids next year. We talked about vacations. We talked about the future like it was real. But my stomach did not calm down. That uneasy feeling stayed. I felt like I lived with someone who looked like my husband but was not fully him anymore. It was like a mask was wearing my husband's face. Then one Thursday afternoon, everything broke open. I was cleaning the small office area at home, sorting papers and wiping dust, trying to keep myself busy. Our shared iPad was on the desk. We both used it sometimes for streaming or checking emails. It buzzed with a new message. I did not pick it up to spy. I did not go looking for trouble. The alert appeared right there on the screen. The message was from a contact saved as M. It said they could not wait for the weekend getaway. It also said she still does not suspect anything. I froze. My breath stopped. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the iPad. I stared at the message again and again, like my brain refused to accept it. She still does not suspect anything. That she was me. That weekend getaway was not a work trip. It was betrayal. And that letter M was not a mystery for long. I already had a name in my head, even though I did not want to admit it. Brian's supervisor was a woman named Melissa. She was 34, recently divorced, always dressed perfectly, always confident, always the kind of person who looked like she belonged in a higher world than mine. I had seen her at company events. She smiled at Brian in a way that felt too comfortable. I told myself I was being jealous. Now I realized I was being warned by my own instincts. That night I did not cry. Not yet. I waited. When Brian came home, I was sitting in the living room. The iPad sat on the coffee table, open to the conversation. I did not hide it. I did not soften it. I wanted him to walk into the truth. He stepped inside with that same strange smile he had been carrying lately, like he had a secret good life somewhere else. Then he saw my face. The smile disappeared in a second. He said he could explain. I surprised myself by staying calm. I asked him to explain who M was. I asked him to explain the getaway. I asked him why he spoke about his wife like I was a stranger, like I was just she. Brian let out a tired sigh, like he was annoyed that the problem had finally arrived. He ran his hand through his hair. He always did that when nervous. But what I saw on him in that moment was not guilt. It was relief. Like he was tired of acting. He said it was Melissa, and yes, they were together. The way he said it felt colder than the confession itself. It was as if he was telling me he had changed a schedule, not telling me he had destroyed our marriage. I asked how long. He said 6 months. He said it like it was nothing. 6 months. Half a year. Half a year of him coming home late, smelling like another life, guarding his phone, smiling at someone else while I stood in the same house thinking my marriage was just going through stress. Then he started speaking like he had practiced it. He said maybe it was better this way. He said he did not want me to find out like this, but now that I knew, we could stop pretending. He said we both knew it had not been working for a long time. I stared at him, trying to understand how someone could say those words while sitting in the home we built. I asked why. That is when he said the words that cut deeper than the affair. He told me he needed a real woman, not an insecure housewife with no ambition. He said Melissa challenged him. He said she inspired him. He said she had goals, her own life, her own drive. He said I only existed around him, and that it felt suffocating to him. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. My ears rang. For years I believed love meant building a home together. I believed supporting him mattered. I believed caring for our life together mattered. I thought being loyal and steady made me a good partner. But in his mouth, those things became insults. In his eyes, I was not a partner. I was a background object. A shadow. A convenience. The room went quiet. I noticed the ticking wall clock. I noticed the low hum of the refrigerator. I noticed the distant traffic outside. And inside me, something went numb. It was like my mind left my body for a moment just to survive the pain. Then I stood up. I told him he was right, that it had not been working. He looked surprised. I think he expected tears. He expected begging. He expected anger. He expected a scene. But I did not give him the satisfaction. I did not want him to see me break. That night I called my sister Lisa. She lives across town. She picked me up without pushing for details. She just showed up. I packed one suitcase with the basics. I left the house I had lived in for 5 years. I left my husband with his new life and his so-called real woman. I thought that was the worst part. I thought the betrayal would be the deepest pain. I was wrong. Because what I did not know yet was that my husband was only the first knife. The next knives would come from the people I trusted most. The next day I called my best friends, Lauren and Nicole. We had been close since college. The three of us felt like sisters for years. I stood beside Lauren at her wedding. Nicole knew my secrets, my fears, my hopes. If anyone would hold me up, it should have been them. I asked them to meet me at our favorite cafe, Blue Star, downtown. It was a place we had visited 100 times. It smelled like coffee and sugar and comfort. I got there early and sat at our usual corner table. I ordered a chai latte because I needed something warm in my hands, something normal. When Lauren and Nicole arrived, I noticed something right away. Their faces did not carry worry. They did not rush to hug me. They looked uncomfortable, like people who walked into a room where they already knew the truth and did not want to face it. Lauren said hello, but she did not give her usual warm hug. Nicole gave me a small wave and sat down like she wanted space between us. My chest tightened. Still, I started talking. I told them Brian had been cheating for 6 months with Melissa. I waited for shock. I waited for anger on my behalf. I waited for them to call him names and tell me I deserved better. Instead, they exchanged a look. The kind of look that carries history and guilt. Nicole stirred her coffee and said they knew. I could not understand what she meant at first. Then my stomach dropped. I asked how long. Lauren said since the beginning. 15 years of friendship, and in that moment she could not look me in the eyes. She said she saw Brian and Melissa together at an Italian restaurant near his office. That was in October. October. That was 5 months ago. They had known for 5 months and said nothing. My throat burned. My hands went cold. I felt like I was being betrayed again, just in a different way. I asked why they left me in the dark. I asked why they let me keep living like a fool. Nicole said it was not their place. She said they did not want to interfere in my marriage. She said they did not want to get involved. I could barely breathe. I reminded them they were my best friends. I reminded them I would have told them if the roles were reversed. I reminded them friendship is involvement. Friendship is care. Friendship is telling the truth when it matters. Then Lauren said something that turned my heartbreak into pure disbelief. She said maybe it was better this way. She said Brian had not seemed happy for a long time. She said Melissa was impressive, independent, sophisticated, brilliant. She said maybe Brian deserved someone who could match his pace. I stared at her like she was speaking in another language. I repeated her words back to her. I asked if she was seriously defending the man who cheated on me. Nicole tried to soften it. She said it was not that I was a bad person. She said it was just that we wanted different lives. She said Brian was ambitious and wanted growth and travel, and I was more homely, more traditional. Homely. Traditional. They said those words like they were weaknesses. Like they were stains. Like choosing a steady life made me less worthy of loyalty. I felt tears finally slide down my face. I asked them if they thought I deserved to be lied to. I asked them if I deserved to be cheated on for months. They said no, but their voices sounded empty. Their words did not match their actions. Then Lauren said Brian always described me as more like a sister than a wife. That sentence ended something inside me. I stood up. I grabbed my purse. I looked at the 2 women I once trusted with my whole heart. I told them they were pathetic. I told them congratulations for choosing the side of the man who broke a marriage instead of the friend who always showed up for them. Then I walked out. When I stepped into the street, I felt like I had lost everything at once. A husband. 2 best friends. The life I thought was real. The version of myself that believed loyalty would always be met with loyalty. I went back to Lisa's house and broke down in her guest room. Lisa found me there, crying so hard my chest hurt. My sister Lisa has always been my opposite. I avoid conflict. She walks straight toward it. I try to keep peace. She speaks hard truths. But that night she did not lecture me. She just sat beside me and held me. She asked me to tell her everything. So I did. I told her about Brian and Melissa. I told her the cruel words he used. I told her about Lauren and Nicole and their betrayal. I said the part that hurt most was not only the cheating. It was the way Brian spoke to me like I was less. Like the years I spent building our home and supporting him meant nothing. Lisa listened. Then she said something that I did not believe yet, but it planted a seed. She said I was stronger than all of them thought, including me. I felt weak. I felt broken. I felt like a ghost walking around someone else's life. But her words stayed. A few days later, on Monday, I decided to go back to work. I work as an administrative assistant at a veterinary clinic. I love the animals. I love the steady rhythm. It is not a glamorous job, but it is honest, and it has always made me feel useful. I needed routine. I needed something that was mine, not tied to being someone's wife. The moment I walked in, I knew the news had spread. People stopped talking when I passed. People looked at me with pity. Some looked away like they were embarrassed for me. I felt my face heat up. I wondered if Lauren or Nicole had told someone, and the gossip had traveled like it always does. During lunch, my coworker Jessica came up to me. She looked worried and awkward, like she did not want to hurt me but felt she had to tell me something. She asked if I had seen Brian's Facebook. I told her I had not. After everything, I had deleted my social media apps for a while. I did not want to read comments. I did not want to see pictures. I did not want to watch my pain turn into entertainment. Jessica handed me her phone. Brian had written a long post the day before. It painted our separation like it was my fault. He wrote that he tried to save the marriage. He wrote that I was controlling and emotionally unstable. He wrote that I suffocated him. He wrote that he finally found happiness with someone who understood him. The post had many likes, many comments. People I knew were supporting him. They wrote that he deserved happiness. They wrote that I always seemed clingy. They wrote that Brian had always looked stressed, like he carried a burden. I felt sick. My mouth went dry. I had already lost my marriage. Now he was trying to take my reputation too. He was not only leaving me. He was rewriting me into the villain so he could walk away clean. When I came home that night, Lisa was waiting for me in the kitchen. Her face looked different. It held anger, but also focus. Like she had a plan. She said we needed to talk because she learned something about Brian and Melissa. I sat down expecting more pain, more humiliation, more proof that my life had been built on lies. Lisa told me she got a call from someone who used to work with Brian. This person worked at his company and knew things. Lisa said what Brian and Melissa did to me was not new. They had done it before. At least twice, from what this person knew. Melissa had a pattern. She went after married men at the company, especially men whose jobs could help her climb higher. She pulled them in, then used them, then left destruction behind. Lisa said Brian was not an innocent fool. He helped her. He played a part in it. Then Lisa said something that made my heart beat harder. The caller warned her to be careful. She said the situation could be dangerous. Dangerous. That word echoed in my mind. Until then, I thought this was only emotional harm. Painful, yes. Life-changing, yes. But dangerous sounded like something darker underneath. Lisa told me the woman wanted to meet me. She wanted to share what she knew. She wanted to help, but she wanted me to understand this was bigger than one affair. Her name was Amanda. That night I could not sleep. Part of me wanted to shut the door on the whole thing. Move on. Get divorced. Start over. Forget Brian, forget Melissa, forget Lauren and Nicole. But another part of me had woken up. A part that was tired of being small. A part that wanted the full truth. A part that did not want another woman to be destroyed the way I was. The next morning I called Amanda. Her voice was quiet and nervous, like she feared being overheard. She said she worked with Brian and Melissa for 2 years. She said she saw what they did to me and to other people. Other people. That word made my skin prickle. She asked me to meet her at Pearl District Cafe at noon. She told me to be careful who I trusted. She said this went beyond a simple affair. When I hung up, I felt something new. Not hope exactly. Not happiness. But curiosity. The kind of curiosity that comes when you finally stop hiding from the truth. As I got ready, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw tired eyes. I saw a woman who had been called not enough. But I also saw someone starting to wake up. The walk to the cafe felt different than any walk I had taken lately. It felt like I was walking toward answers, not running from shame. Amanda was sitting at a table in the back when I arrived. I recognized her from company events. She was in her 40s, with brown hair pulled into a bun and simple glasses. She looked kind but tense. She kept glancing at the door. She stood when I approached and thanked me for coming. We sat down. She ordered black coffee. Her hands shook slightly. I ordered a chai latte again, holding on to small normal habits like a lifeline. I asked her to tell me what she knew. Amanda took a deep breath and said what happened to me was not an accident. It was planned. Melissa had a method. She studied the married men. She chose the ones who could benefit her career. She pulled them in slowly, and she used their fear of losing everything to control them. I asked why married men. Amanda explained married men were easier to pressure because they had more to lose. When the truth came out, they would panic. They would try to protect themselves. They would agree to things they should never agree to. They would help create stories that made them look like victims instead of cheaters. Then Amanda opened a folder. Inside were documents, emails, copies of messages, notes, printed timelines. She showed me other cases. A woman named Sarah Martinez. Another named Jennifer Walsh. In both cases, Melissa had seduced the husband, then the husband got promoted soon after. The wife suffered the damage. The marriage ended. The wife either left the company or was pushed out socially until she broke. Amanda said she documented everything for 2 years. I asked why she was telling me this now. Amanda said Sarah was her best friend. Amanda watched her life collapse. Amanda did nothing then. She was scared. She felt powerless. She regretted it. She said she could not watch it happen again. Then she said something that made my blood turn cold. She said Brian was not just a man who got seduced. He was not just weak. He was part of it. He helped Melissa. He helped her gather information about wives. He helped her find weaknesses. He helped her build stories that made the wives look unstable when the marriages broke. I felt anger rising in me, but it was not a wild, screaming anger. It was cold. It was clear. Amanda said there was more. She said there were rumors that certain people in leadership protected Melissa, that there might be bribery, that there might be real crimes, not just personal betrayal. She said if that was true, this could become dangerous. People like Melissa do not like being exposed. People like that fight back when cornered. When I left the cafe, I was not the same woman who walked in. I had information. I had patterns. I had proof that this was bigger than my pain. That night I told Lisa everything. She listened and asked me if I was sure I wanted to get involved. She reminded me I could still walk away, start fresh, and let the company handle its own mess. I told her I could not live with knowing other women might be destroyed the same way. Lisa asked what I wanted to do. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small, sharp smile rise on my face. I told her I wanted them to destroy themselves, and I thought I knew how to help that happen. The next morning I woke up feeling strange. I was still hurting. I was still grieving. But I did not feel like a helpless victim anymore. I felt like someone with a purpose. Then a phone call came that changed everything again. A woman introduced herself as Patricia Williams. She said she was the wife of the director at Brian's company. She said she wanted to talk to me about Melissa and her behavior. She said she wanted to end it. Amanda had mentioned Patricia's name. Hearing it directly made my body tense. I asked why she wanted to talk to me. Patricia said she had evidence. She said she had been watching this for a long time. She said some people were destroying families and careers inside the company, and it needed to stop. She said we could work together. The call was short, but the tone was serious. Patricia asked to meet me that afternoon at a private restaurant outside the city. She warned me once we started, there would be no turning back. I looked at myself in the kitchen window reflection. I did not see a weak housewife anymore. I saw a woman who had been underestimated and was finally done being quiet. I told Patricia yes. I was prepared. The restaurant was in Lake Oswego, a quiet place about 20 minutes from Portland. The kind of place where people go when they want privacy. I arrived early and chose a table with a view of the lake. Patricia arrived on time. She was in her 50s with perfectly styled gray hair. She wore a navy blazer that looked expensive without screaming about it. She had the presence of someone used to control. People like her do not ask for space in a room. They take it. She greeted me with a firm handshake and thanked me for coming. I admitted I was confused. My life had felt normal a week ago. Now it felt like I stepped into a strange drama I did not recognize. Patricia said normal can be a lie people live inside without noticing. Then she got straight to the point. She said Melissa was a threat to the company. Not just morally, but legally. Melissa was smart, manipulative, and dangerous. Patricia said her husband knew about problems, but corporate issues and legal risks made it hard to act without strong evidence. Then Patricia opened a folder and showed me what she had. It was a full file. Not just rumors. Not just stories. It was detailed evidence. Victims. Timelines. HR documents. Emails. Reports. Even recordings of conversations. She walked me through Sarah, Jennifer, others, and then me. Patricia said my situation created an opportunity because I was willing to talk and I had already been attacked publicly through Brian's posts. I asked what she wanted from me. Patricia asked if I knew about the company's annual party. The big formal event where employees, families, investors, and executives all came together. I knew it. Brian always made me attend. I always felt out of place. Patricia said she wanted me there this year, but as her guest. I did not understand at first. Why would the director's wife invite the director's employee's ex-wife as a guest? Patricia said I would understand soon. She said all I needed to do was show up looking confident, calm, and untouchable. She said my presence alone would help the plan. I asked what plan. Patricia said it would be a public revelation that would change everything. When I left that restaurant, I felt both excited and terrified. Patricia gave me a card and told me to meet someone named Marcus the next day. She said Marcus would help prepare me. Prepare me for what? Patricia said to be the woman I actually was, not the one Brian claimed I was. The next morning I went to an expensive salon in Portland. Marcus greeted me like I was a project he was thrilled to take on. He was in his 40s, stylish, confident, and blunt in a way that felt oddly comforting. He studied my face and hair and said my beauty was being hidden. He said we were going to bring it back. For hours he worked on me. Hair, skin, nails, details. It felt strange, like I was watching myself from a distance while someone else rebuilt the outside of me. Then he took me to a boutique and chose a dress. It was navy, elegant, strong, not flashy. The kind of dress that says I belong in the room without begging for attention. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked like a different person, but because I looked like someone who had stopped apologizing for existing. Marcus said I was ready. In the days leading to the party, my emotions kept swinging. Some moments I felt powerful. Some moments I felt afraid. I still had pain. I still had shock. But the seed Lisa planted was growing. Then Brian made his move. The Thursday before the party, Lisa called me at work. Her voice was tight. She said Brian was at her house with documents and he demanded to see me. I left work and drove to Lisa's home. Brian sat in the living room with a folder open on the coffee table. He looked different. Thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. The smug confidence I saw during the confession was gone. Now he looked desperate. He said we needed to talk. I told him we did not. But Lisa signaled me to listen, so I did. Brian said he made a mistake. He said Melissa was not who he believed. He said she was blackmailing men at the company. He said she had photos and recordings and proof of affairs. He said she used it to get promotions, access, money, control. I asked why he was telling me. He said because she had evidence against him too. He was scared. He said Melissa told him the only way out was to get evidence against me. Evidence that could discredit me if I ever spoke up. I asked evidence of what? Brian said anything. Anything that could paint me as unstable. Any story that could make people doubt me. He said she wanted him to sign a sworn statement saying I was emotionally unstable and that our marriage ended because of my behavior. I asked him if he planned to sign. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. He did not come to me for forgiveness. He came to me because he wanted safety. He was still trying to save himself, even if it meant hurting me again. I stood up and told him something I meant with my whole heart. I told him I felt relief. He looked confused. I told him I felt relief because I finally saw exactly who he was. I told him I did not lose a man of character. I lost a coward. A man willing to throw his ex-wife under the bus to avoid facing his own choices. I pushed the documents back at him. I told him to do whatever Melissa told him, because when it ended, he would realize he chose the wrong side. Brian left looking shaken. As soon as he was gone, I called Patricia. I told her Melissa knew. I told her Melissa knew about our connections and was moving. Patricia answered calmly. She said she already knew. I asked how she could be so calm. Patricia said she was counting on it. She said people like Melissa survive by being careful. Of course she has eyes everywhere. Of course she learns things fast. Patricia said the plan did not require Melissa to stay unaware. In fact, panic would make Melissa show her true behavior. Patricia told me to trust her. On the night of the party, I felt more nervous than I ever had in my life. The event was at one of the nicest hotels in Portland. A ballroom with bright chandeliers and a view of the river. People wore formal clothes. They smiled. They laughed. They acted like life was perfect. I arrived as Patricia's guest. When I entered, people looked at me. Not with pity. Not with judgment. With curiosity. Maybe even admiration. They wondered why the director's wife walked in with this woman on her arm. Patricia found me near the entrance. She told me I looked perfect. She asked if I was ready. Then she guided me through the room like she was introducing a new player in a game. Across the ballroom I saw Brian. He stood with Melissa. Melissa wore a bright red dress and looked like someone who believed she owned every room she entered. Brian looked tense. When he saw me beside Patricia, his face changed. He looked shocked. He looked afraid. He clearly did not expect me there. Patricia leaned close and told me to simply watch. Then she began introducing me to people. Executives. Investors. Spouses. Employees. Each introduction was careful. Each conversation seemed to have a hidden purpose. Patricia introduced me as a strong woman who escaped a toxic relationship. She said I had a story about manipulation and workplace harm. People listened. They asked questions. They looked angry on my behalf. And as I spoke, I realized something important. I was telling my story without begging for validation. I was telling it like I knew my worth. I was not describing myself as weak or small. I was describing what happened, clearly, calmly, like someone who had survived and learned. It felt powerful. Then I saw Amanda moving through the crowd. She looked nervous but determined. She approached Patricia and nodded. Patricia nodded back. Amanda walked toward the stage. Soon the room quieted. People noticed something serious was happening. The microphone came on. Amanda introduced herself and said she worked in human resources. She said she needed to speak about something uncomfortable but necessary. Melissa's face went pale. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Amanda described a documented pattern of manipulation and blackmail. The screen behind her displayed evidence. Emails. Messages. Photos. Timelines. Names. She spoke about women whose families were destroyed. She spoke about men promoted soon after affairs. She spoke about how Melissa built control through secrets and fear. The room became silent in a way that felt heavy. You could feel people realizing this was not gossip. This was proof. Security moved quietly near the exits. Melissa tried to slip away, but she was blocked. Then Patricia stepped onto the stage. She thanked Amanda and said she had more evidence gathered recently. Patricia presented recordings and documents that made the room shift from shock to outrage. She showed proof of bribes and cover-ups. She showed proof of threats toward victims. Then Patricia said something that made my heart slam. She said this behavior was not only tolerated, it was supported by people in leadership. The screen showed emails between Melissa and the company director, Patricia's husband. Emails that showed he knew what was happening and played a part in it. In that moment, I understood the real truth. Patricia was not protecting her husband. She was destroying him. She had been building a case, not only for the company, but for her own life. Patricia's voice turned cold and sharp as she said her husband violated the company and their marriage. She said he was being arrested for extortion, blackmail, and abuse of power. Then law enforcement entered the ballroom. It happened fast. Like a scene from a movie. Agents moved toward the director, toward Melissa, toward other names connected to the evidence. Brian tried to move away too, but he was stopped. When Brian was handcuffed, he looked at me across the room. There was no pride left. No arrogance. No cruelty. Only fear. Only regret. Only the face of a man who finally understood consequences. The weeks after that were chaos. Legal interviews. Statements. Meetings. Evidence. More names. More victims. More stories. I became part of a large investigation that reached beyond one affair and beyond one company. Melissa was sentenced to prison for blackmail and related crimes. The director was sentenced too. Other people connected to the scheme faced charges or lost careers. The company collapsed under fines and lawsuits. Brian cooperated with investigators, and even then, he faced prison time. His life and career were over. But what shocked me most was how different I felt during it all. I was still grieving my marriage. I was still grieving the years I wasted. But I did not feel powerless anymore. Lauren and Nicole tried contacting me when they realized the truth was public and ugly. They tried to apologize. They tried to explain. They tried to act like they were confused victims too. I did not respond. Some betrayals do not deserve more conversation. Months passed. One day I sat in a cafe again, the same kind of place where my world broke open. But this time I was not alone and I was not collapsing. Patricia became a real friend. Not a perfect person, not a soft person, but a real one. Amanda became close too. The woman who stepped forward when others stayed silent. Together we created something new. We started a consulting business focused on helping women document workplace harassment, recognize manipulation patterns, and protect themselves legally and emotionally. We helped women who felt trapped. We helped women who were being smeared and rewritten as villains. We taught them how to hold proof, how to stay calm, how to rebuild. Brian once said I had no ambition. He said I was only a housewife. He said I had no goals. He never imagined I would help expose the mess he joined. He never imagined I would rebuild without him. He never imagined my quiet strength would become something bigger than his loud opinions. I moved into a new home paid for with my own money. I did not rush into another marriage. I did not chase validation. I focused on healing, therapy, friendships that were real, and work that had meaning. Sometimes I passed the old building where Brian worked. It stood empty with a sign outside. For rent. A simple reminder that lives built on lies collapse eventually. Not always quickly, but eventually. Brian wrote letters from prison more than once. He tried to explain himself. He tried to blame Melissa. He tried to ask forgiveness. He wrote that he never wanted to hurt me. I never replied. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I learned something important. Some people will always rewrite themselves as the victim. If you answer them, you become part of their story again. I refused that. Melissa's lawyers reached out too, trying to bargain. They offered information about other cases in exchange for support that could reduce her sentence. I refused that as well. Justice is not a trade. Accountability is not a deal. Lauren and Nicole moved away from what I heard. Maybe they wanted a place where no one knew what they did. Maybe they wanted a fresh start. I hope they learned something, but it is not my job to watch their growth. Lisa stayed my rock through everything. She never let me shrink. She never let me apologize for being hurt. She never let me forget my worth. Sometimes she reminds me that the strongest thing I did was not the public exposure or the legal work. The strongest thing I did was choosing myself after years of putting everyone else first. Now, when people ask about my story, I do not talk about revenge. I do not brag about anyone being punished. I talk about awakening. I talk about learning to stop seeing myself through the eyes of people who benefit from calling me small. I used to think being a steady wife meant I should stay quiet and accept things. I used to think love meant swallowing discomfort, so the home felt peaceful. Now I know peace that requires silence is not peace. Brian said I was not woman enough for him. He was wrong, but not in the way he meant. I was never too small. I was never too quiet. I was never less. The truth is he was never man enough for me. Not because of money or status or ambition, but because he lacked character. He lacked loyalty. He lacked courage. He chose cruelty because it was easier than honesty. He chose a fantasy because it flattered his ego. It took betrayal to free me from the life I thought I had to accept. It took losing people to show me who was real. It took being underestimated to show me the power of being unseen until you are ready. Today, when I look back, I do not feel the same sharp anger I once felt. I feel gratitude. Not because the pain was good, but because the pain pushed me out of a life that was never truly mine. If anyone reading this is living through betrayal, I want you to know something. You are not defined by the person who mistreated you. You are not defined by the friend who failed you. You are not defined by the story someone posts to make themselves look better. You are defined by what you choose next. Sometimes the end of a marriage is not the end of your life. Sometimes it is the beginning of a life you finally own. 2 years later, I can say I am happier alone than I ever was trying to be enough for someone who did not deserve my devotion. And that might be the most important lesson I ever learned. Because the best revenge is not destroying someone. The best revenge is refusing to stay destroyed.